I want to show support for House Bill 4220 and for your leadership in getting this legislation moving. During the recent energy policy discussion, there was a lot of discussion around system reliability, and that was talked about in, as the PowerPoint gets up here, that was talked about in context of power generation capacity, but there's a broader issue around system reliability that I think we need to address as policymakers. And I want to first express my thanks that Cindy Ayers was able to come in and testify today. She did this on kind of short notice. I've been working with Dr. Peter Pry on this very topic around hardening the grid. As you alluded to, we're going to have further discussions on that in the future, but he provided me with Cindy as an expert on the smart grid technology and what the impacts are. And I agree with you. I would rather have the focus of this discussion on smart meters specifically. There is a much larger discussion around the security of the grid, but I think there's plenty to be concerned about specifically with the smart meters. And as you may know, my background is that I'm an aerospace engineer, bachelor's, master's degree in aerospace engineering. I was responsible for the cabling design on the International Space Station for the Quest airlock. I also worked with the Department of Defense on training simulations that are designed to train the next generation of warfighters against different threats. I say that not because I think I have all the answers, but I do have a pretty good understanding, I think, what some of the basic questions we should be asking as policymakers should be. And in that context, when it comes to reliability discussions, it is a much broader discussion than just simply the capacity of our power generation capacity in the state. And when I look at what happens with smart meters in particular, I'm concerned that it's actually putting our homes, our nation, and frankly, even some of the power suppliers at significant risk. And I don't know if we're quite ready for the presentation yet, but I'm going to skip ahead here. And one key thing I want to make sure people understand is the fact that smart meter itself is the foundational component of what they call a smart grid. And that's kind of what Cindy was focused on, was the overall grid implications on it, not simply the individual smart meter. But these are like the basic Lego blocks of a smart grid. So if this Lego block goes south, oops. Sorry, we've been hacked. No. So these are foundational components. This is a picture of the smart meter that I have outside of my home. And Representative Griffin, to your point about hack access points, there's a little knob right up on the front there with a special tool. You can actually bypass all the rest of the firewalls, get into that directly, and unless that tool is under control, you have an access point. Now, it only puts, to Representative Barrett's point, it only puts the AMI itself, this local network, at risk, but it's conceivable that that could be hacked and extended into other areas of the grid as well. But I want to make sure that we're talking about what is the real risk here with the smart meters. These are foundational components of these smart grids, and they connect essentially every home to AMI, a digital communications network. Unlike an analog meter, which is just simply reading the current coming into the home, these smart meters are both, they take information from the home and they actually they have ability to put control signals to shut off power as well.
Senator, if I can just note for committee members, you have a copy of his presentation, paper copy. So
I'm not going to go through all these various security threats, but the key word that I want to highlight is that, remember, in context of our energy policy discussion, the key thing was about availability of power. And when you actually go off and do a detailed analysis, as they did at the California State University out in Sacramento, of what all the threats are, and I've done similar analyses before as an engineer, as failure modes and effects analyses, they highlighted that availability was one of the key consequences of these various security threats. That means the system reliability is at risk. That means that the power that's provided to our homes, to our businesses, and to our government offices here are put at risk with the addition of these smart meters. That is a risk that is not entertained when you have an analog meter. So I just want to put these into three broad categories: national security, Cindy Ayers already addressed that; business liability I want to talk about; and family security. So national security, this is James Woolsey, former CIA director, a so-called smart grid that is vulnerable. As what we've got is not smart at all, it's really a stupid grid. And she highlighted what some of the concerns were. Now, this is a real risk. This is something that is filed if you go into the business risks associated with for consumers and for DTE. Under their SEC 10K filings, they have to list the business risks. Under those business risks, the cybersecurity of their system is specifically highlighted as one of the key concerns because that shuts down their business operations. Now, they just so happen to have the government as a risk backstop in that context, but it doesn't make it any less of a risk. This is a very real risk. This is not a pie-in-the-sky idea. Now, let's get back down to brass tacks. What happens to our families? What risks are we put in place with that? When we actually look at the smart meters that are in place right now in our homes, there's no surge protection, which leads to fires. There's no conducted emissions filter, which leads to premature appliance failures. There's a cybersecurity backdoor, as we talked about earlier. And also something that hasn't been talked about is this infrared light emission that can be used by bad guys to identify whether or not somebody's at home or not, because this does flashes based on the rate of energy consumption in your home. And there's no circuit breaker between the meter and the power source, which also leads to fire. So with that being said, I implore the committee members here to take this House Bill 4220 very seriously. The risk that's proposed or that's embedded in the adoption of the smart meter technology is not a risk that's inherent with analog meters, and we should at least give our consumers a choice as to whether or not they adopt the smart meter technology or not.
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Any questions from the committee for the senator? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. I'm sorry, Representative Camilleri.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Tu, for your testimony. So I guess my question revolves around the issues of national security.
Yeah.
So if other states are already using smart meters, which they are, and they're already susceptible to hacking the grid as they are, if this is the concern that we're raising today, what would change if Michigan were to go away from using smart meters, having only analog meters, and how would that impact national security?
Well, first of all, it would take one point of failure out of the equation, so that's the smart meter, which is that basic building block. The approaches that a lot of states have done, including the state of California, is that when you do a failure modes and effects analysis, you identify all the different controls that you can put into place to mitigate that risk as much as possible. Those controls cost a lot of money that ultimately our consumers are going to be the ones left holding the bag in regards to paying for all these other risk mitigation efforts. And so then it begs the question, what is the fundamental consumer benefit associated with these smart meters? Right now, they're getting sacked with a lot of extra costs associated with them, but what is the actual consumer benefit? And we as representatives of our constituents and policymakers, it is our duty, first and foremost, to represent the best interests of our constituents.